All right, AP1 students, in this video we're going to talk about the hypodermis. Since we talked about the dermis in the previous video, we want to talk about this layer that's not actually technically part of the skin, but it is closely associated with it. So we talk about it when we talk about the integumentary system. So I call it the hypodermis, but you can call it the subcutaneous layer. That's another name for it because it's below the skin. And also, in certain areas of the body, one of the tissues that's part of the hypodermis or subcutaneous layer is adipose tissue. And in certain areas of the body, there's like a large amount of adipose tissue. It's kind of the predominant one. So sometimes they'll call it just subcutaneous fat as well. So that's kind of, it has come a few names. So let me slide down here so we can look at our subcutaneous layer, also called the hypodermis, and again sometimes called subcutaneous fat, depending on, if the adipose tissue predominates in certain areas. We'll call it subcutaneous fat. But it does have another type besides the adipose connective tissue. The subcutaneous layer or hypodermis also contains the areolar connective tissue as well. So those are the two main types of tissues that are present in the hypodermis or the subcutaneous layer. All right, so the function of our hypodermis or subcutaneous layer is to stabilize the position of the skin, because the skin is actually connected to the subcutaneous layer or hypodermis. And then what it allows is for the skin to be stable and then also connected to the underlying structures or tissues that are below it. So in this case, muscle is going to be the next tissue that's underneath the subcutaneous layer. So it's connecting the integument to the muscle. So that's what the subcutaneous layer, hypodermis layer, is doing. So stabilizes skin and connects it to underlying structures. All right, so it also has more functions because it does contain a lot of that adipose tissue, and so that's very cushy. So it helps to kind of pad and protect the body. So it also has a role in that because, again, it contains adipose tissue. That is where fats, lipids is another word for it, are stored in the body. And so it can, and we use fatty acids, which are part of lipids. We use those for energy. Our cells will sometimes. So we do have, it's a place where we can store energy is in that hypodermis or subcutaneous layer too. And then the thermal insulation is another function of that subcutaneous layer or hypodermis too. So provides a thermal insulation, kind of keeps the heat in the body. So, all right, now something else that we should be aware of with the subcutaneous layer or the hypodermis is that there's an extensive amount of blood vessels. Just like there was blood vessels in our dermis, there is an extensive amount of blood vessels also in the subcutaneous layer hypodermis. And so that is really important because we figured out that if we use a hypodermic needle, so everybody knows what a needle is on a syringe, so the name of the needle is hypodermic, and the reason it got that name is because we figured out that we could use a hypodermic needle and pass through the epidermis, pass it through the dermis, and then get the tip of that needle into the hypodermis or the subcutaneous layer, and then we could inject some medication, so some sort of drug or vaccine, and we could put it in that area. And because there's so many blood vessels in that area, the drug or the vaccine can get into the bloodstream pretty quickly, and then it can, it can travel to wherever part of the body it needs to go to in order to be helpful to that person. So that's another kind of function of the subcutaneous or hypodermis layers. It's an area for injections of various drugs and vaccines. So, and it's because it has that really large amount of blood vessels in that area, so a lot of area for the drug to get into the bloodstream and travel to the different parts of the body to generally help that person. All right, so that is our subcutaneous layer, or hypodermis, and we will see you in the next video. We're going to continue on talking about our integumentary system. We're going to kind of jump into specific functions of the integumentary system overall. So I'll see you in the next video.